This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Hey folks, welcome to the podcast. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing today? The number of ounces of silver needed to buy an ounce of gold now at near 30-year highs. Silver is bargain priced when compared to gold, and it's a perfect time to protect a portion of your savings with silver. And Silver Gold Bull has a wide variety of best value silver for every budget. Simply text or email Graham for details. Whether you are a seasoned investor or new to precious metals, Graham will work with you to answer all your questions and recommend the best products to meet your investing goals. It's all down in the show notes. If you're on silvergoldbull.ca or .com, just make sure to reference the Shaun Newman Podcast. Bow Valley Credit Union is your Alberta-regulated, fully serviced financial institution, and they're proud to present the first in Canada gold collateral lending. Now, all of you can lend against your physical gold and silver for favorable rates. It's like a HELOC on your gold and silver, and if you don't have any gold and silver, that is, you can also get a loan to purchase it from Bow Valley Credit Union. All you got to do is start your Bow Valley Credit Union membership today. Send an email to welcome@bowvalleycu.com. It's all down in the show notes. And start a better path forward with Bow Valley CU. Profit River. When it comes to firearms, optics, accessories, they serve all of Canada. So listen up, Canada. They got a brand new website, easy for all of you to use, some cool new features. On any purchase, just use the coupon code SNP. It gets into monthly draws that can, reward you for purchasing through Profit River. And when it comes to firearms, optics, accessories, all your gun needs, don't look any further than Profit River. Just head to profitriver.com and you can get, a huge variety of firearms and expert staff to help you get what you need where you're at today in Canada. Just go to profitriver.com. Diamond 7 Meats. Well, tired of the big chain stores, folks? Discover Diamond 7 Meats, a family-run business you can trust, serving our beautiful community for over 26 years. And in all the conversations I've had with their staff, they kept on repeating how important their values of honesty and integrity are while serving their community. They offer all the cuts you can find at any retail store, and their expert staff can help you with, anything you need to know about meat, whether, how thick you want it, to cooking temperatures, and a whole lot more. Heck, whether or not you're getting the right cut, maybe, they can offer any cuts. And you can just call them and be like, hey, I would like this fresh. Can you make this? They'll do that. You can also just show up, and they got it sitting there in the freezer as well. They're on Highway 17 and 67th Street North. You can give them a call today. That is, give Diamond 7 Meats a call today, 306-825-9718. If you're looking for concrete, stamped concrete, the new studio, the guys who did that, Renegade Acres, that's Caleb Taves, and reach out if you're looking for somebody to lay a pad or, some stamped concrete like he does. Fantastic work. Can't speak. Wow, there's a lot of men that have come through the podcast. Let me tell you, I've been very humbled at some of the people that have come around this podcast. Caleb Taves is just one of the many. The Cornerstone Forum 2026, believe me, we're working on it here in July. We're hoping to have an answer. I keep saying that. And hopefully I'll have an answer for you sooner than later. I want to remind everybody, for the month of July, we have no Tuesday episode. So if you're going, where was Tuesday? We don't have a Tuesday episode for the month of July. And then Thursdays is Throwback Thursdays. Friday, mashup at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard regular time. But Tuesday has a guest co-host for the month of July as I head off on holidays and I guess continue holidays with the wife and kids. So if you're wondering, that's where, or wondering why, I should say why there's no Tuesday, that'd be why. We take a little bit of a break here in July and recharge the batteries, and we'll be ready to roll August 1. Have no worries. I think we get back on a it's still there, on a mashup, if memory serves me correct. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, YouTube, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to hit the retweet. Make sure to, cut out your favorite parts of the podcast. I just saw a cool one where people were making commentary on some of the guests. That's cool too. You have fun with it. If you're enjoying it, obviously text me. My number's down in the show notes. Would love to hear your thoughts. All right, let's get on to that. Tale of the tape. The first is the head coach of the U18 AAA Lloydminster Lancers hockey team. The second, the head coach of the Lakeland Rustlers women's hockey team. And the third, a decorated fastball coach. I'm talking about Chris King, Morgan Mann, and Deb MacArthur. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. Got to always silence old Chris over there. I'm joined by Morgan Mann, Deb MacArthur, and Chris King. Folks, thanks for hopping in the studio tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I came up with, I was thinking about this idea of like a coaching roundtable. We've done lots of blue-collar roundtables. I've done a trucking roundtable with Dad and a few other trucking guys. And so, you know, I'm new into coaching and just little guys, right? So U7 hockey and U9 baseball now. And, you know, I thought, why not get some wisdom in here and try and enlighten myself? I was just telling you folks before we started that, you know, when I first started coaching U7 hockey, I went to Hockey Alberta training. And one of the most important things to learn was that, you know, these kids, these 5 and 6-year-olds are just starting kindergarten. So, you know, school for the first time, being away from the family, and then first graders. So they're actually at full-time school. And, you know, sometimes when they get through that week, well, we all have kids. We've all seen it. We've all seen the ups and downs, ebb and flows. And so I treated U7 with a little bit of, you know, like, don't expect them to be all Wayne Gretzky. Let's just try and create a fun environment to deal with kids getting off the school bus and then trying to give them a fun environment. Anyways, that's where I wanted to start. I wanted to start with you know, maybe a little bit about yourself. Morgan, it's a long time since you were on here. It was episode 14 when you and Merv first came on. We're at like 800 and something. Deb, it's your first time. And Chris, you've been joining some of the Brothers Roundtables recently.
Not a brother.
Not a brother, correct. So I thought we'd start ladies first. We'd give Deb the spotlight. And just a little bit about yourself, Deb, so the audience can get to know who they're listening to, how many years you've been coaching, and maybe just maybe one of your first experiences in coaching. I don't know. You must have a memory or two.
Well, I came into coaching following my basically in fastball, softball, because that was the sport that I excelled in and played for a number of years. Had great opportunity of winning a national, going to PanAm games in Puerto Rico. So I had a lot of background in ball, and I after I got married, I decided that I couldn't do the travel. So I thought I'd pick up on coaching. I actually picked it up on what they would call today U15 in a group out of Marshall and boys. And I coached with Dan Dunham at the time. We were out there. And during that time, I actually had a daughter, Kristen. And we used to go to the park, and Dan would carry her under his arm as we went along. So, and all the parents would take her while we were coaching. That's how hard up they were for a coach. But, you know, my experience was, it was different. I had to learn in this group. The boys were actually concerned about how they looked, which was a shock to me, because as a female softball player, we didn't care. And so I had to do a few little tricks before the game would start. I'd actually make them do head first slides to get dirty, so they weren't too concerned about the game and playing the game. So I guess that's a kind of a funny story, but it was also a learning that you have that I needed them to get beyond that, is their hair in the right place? And I wasn't prepared for that with the male athletes. I thought that'd be a no-brainer. But so I started there, and then I actually went into coaching the would have been U18 girls. And I don't know if you remember this name, but one a top chucker was Toby Blackburn, and very competitive group of young ladies, and we did very well. Went to a number of nationals, and I guess I've just always coached in that area, and I carried that forward until it was time to pick up and start coaching my own kids. And I actually started, Shaun, with your group, with Clark in, I don't know what you guys would have been, what they call them now, would have been U7,
Mites
U8.
would have been
yeah,
mites back then.
yeah.
I've been trying to figure out what mites was.
I think that was U7.
It was very young.
Well, you went mite, then squirt, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Pee-wee.
And then Pee-wee, and then Bantam.
Pee-wee was like 13, 14. Bantam was...
So it would have been a very young.
Probably 7, 8, 9 or something of that
somewhere
range.
in that neighborhood.
Tom Thumb, Mighty Mites, Mites, Pee-wee.
Yeah.
Right, on the hockey
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're different for ball.
for ball.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I even had some experience of coaching in hockey. I mean, I have a hilarious story about that one, but I'll let everyone else have a chat.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
Listen,
I
we
gotta
got
go?
time. You can't just
Okay,
say
so
that. Now
I
I'm going to
was-
think about it.
Dean, my husband, was coaching Clark in his hockey when they were very young, and so and he was coaching with Greg Chapman. So if they didn't show up, the deal was if they didn't show up, then Deb and I would go out and coach. And so here I am getting ready. It was Christmas time, it was concert time, and I was trying to get to the school, and it was about 5, and Dean's not home, and Clark's getting impatient because they always dressed in their outfits at home. And so anyway, I said, well, I guess I'm going to go. I guess I'll have to coach. And he said, well, are you sure Dad's not coming home? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not coming home, but we don't have a bunch of time, so let's get going. So then he gets to the door and he says to me, he says, well, at least tie your hair back. And I said, okay. I said, but I'll tell you what, when you get on the ice and I tell you to skate, you skate, because I'm the coach when we get there. But it was funny, like he was not wanting his mom on the ice, you know. And then we actually had to coach a couple of times. So the miracle was it was around Halloween time, and had extra candy left over, and we were in a tournament in Maidstone, and so Deb Chapman and I decided we want them to pass the puck, and they weren't passing the puck. So the deal was, you know, every time you pass the puck, you're going to get a treat. Well, the puck was all over the ice, and we actually won that tournament. It was the first time they'd won with 2 female coaches. So, you know, lots of funny things happen, but adaptation seems to be the big thing, you know, with whatever group that you have. I found as a coach, it wasn't about me. I had to adapt to how was I going to get the best out of each player that I had, and how was I going to grow them? Like growing an athlete is probably the most powerful thing that you can do is, you know, when they start at a certain level and they end at a level higher. And I think that for me, that was always my goal.
That's awesome.
Morgue.
Those are hard words.
Oh my
Great
God.
start.
Well, how many you've been a guest in here? You and Merv came in, episode 14. That was a ton of fun. That was in the old dungeon where I'm pretty sure people thought I was taking them out to kill them out a little outside of Lloydminster, because that was a special place. Everybody's got to get their start. But when we talk, we'll give the audience a little bit of your background. And then how many years you've been coaching? And I don't know, fun memory from when you first started, because I assume we're all very similar then. And when you first walked in and you're the coach, and you got some funny things that happened, and they probably stick out.
Mm-hmm. Well, born and raised here just north of Lloydminster, and grew up playing every sport I could. I was fortunate to have parents that could, you know, got me into sports and supported that. And hockey was the main focus, but we did everything that we could, ball in the summer and a little bit of some ranch rodeoing and everything we could. If it was active, we'd try and be involved. Meaning my brother and I, and so I think sometimes having a sibling that you can compete with inspires you a little bit, that competitive edge. So if it wasn't formal at a venue somewhere, we'd be competing at home up in the loft, shooting pucks, one person goalie, one person the shooter. So a love of sports started real early. And then it was a natural fit, I think, with teaching and going into the teaching profession. So right out of university, I first got a start in coaching, I guess, helping Brent Dallin with the Steeler program. In the very first years, it got up and running, and Brent was the person who sort of got behind that and got it started and saw a need for it. They just celebrated. There was before the ESO Cup celebration for the Steelers, and I think 2000 is when that program started. So
it's been going 25
years.
Hey.
Right in that number.
Yeah.
It was a rounded off number. Maybe it was 2005, but it was. It's been around, and so that was very enjoyable. Brent was also I was involved with Brent with the Border Kings at that time, and so and I just have always been, if there was open ice or a chance to, whether it was to get out and help coach or work with young people or get out and play shinny, I still love coaching today. I think as much to hit the fresh sheet of ice as much as the players. I just love the competition and being out there on the field, whether it's on the ice or in the arena. And then in my internship, my first job out of university was at Lashburn High School. And I ran into, they had a really special staff. I would have put that staff at that time up against any staff in any high school staff anywhere. Not at that time, but the principal at the time is now my father-in-law, Doug Abrosimoff. But and I mean, he's coached Deb, and I'm sure Deb will speak at some point about Doug, and an old school principal where you not only were the principal, you're coaching the soccer team, you're running the student leadership group, you're just really involved. And I've that's a philosophy that's sort of I've tried to emulate in some ways, that a teacher should be super involved. It's the time you spend outside of the classroom that you really can have an effect with students and make a difference. And so Murray McDonnell out in Lashburn introduced me to the sport of rugby. And this is a guy who'd never played the sport of rugby, but it was in his wife's family, in their lineage and part of their history and who they are. And that's a whole nother story, which you'd interviewed Murray one time.
Forgive me for looking on my phone. I know that's bad etiquette.
You have the whole history on record, but it's quite a story. Anyway, going out with Murray and to his practices, I was just blown away on a couple of different things. One, a guy who'd never played, his knowledge of the game. I'm a big believer you don't have to have played a sport to be a good coach of it. It's about how you are with people. And but he'd read everything there was written on the sport and knew it inside and out, so he was well prepared that way. But just how he treated his athletes and how much they respected him, that was a drawing card. And I also love the sport, how it can. And so since then, I've had a rugby I'm going into my 30th year of teaching next year. And I've had a rugby program for 27 years. And I love the sport just about as much as hockey. And for in a school, I love it more because it doesn't cost any money. It can humble the school bully, and it can give confidence to young people who never thought they had it in them. And there's no offense, defense. Everybody, when you're on defense, if you're not holding the line with the person right next to you, you've got a problem. And so I've never seen had students on a rugby team who didn't all get along. At the sense of respect among each other after a game, it's next level, because I think that's what you get a little bit with combative physical sports. But there's no but it's really a sport where you have to work together, and there's no sense of the offense is more important than the defense, especially defending in that sport when you're all standing together in one line, and if you're not, then you're only as strong as the next person beside you. that it's just, I can't say enough about it. And I give Murray, I mean, they've kept a program going in Lashburn, and they've named the field after Murray.
Yeah. When I got to interview him, we did it in. My wife teaches out at the elementary school, so we got to do it in front of the entire school.
Yeah.
And they kept bringing in kids in front of it. It was a little intense. It's like episode 30, folks. I don't know. You have to go back and find it. And I was pretty fresh into the old podcasting gig, and all these kids come in and were watching a podcast. Well, because back even 6 years ago, nobody knew what the heck a podcast was, right? It's like, what are we doing? And it was, I should go back and listen to that interview, because that was something. He,
very special guy.
Yeah.
And he could do the same. He would always have a music group perform at Mardi Gras. He would take young students that have never picked up an instrument or had anything to do musically before in their lives. And the Noble Boys, I think, from Hillmond, they were, I've heard one of them, I forget which one of the boys, but one of many that he would introduce them to music. And next thing you know, they're performing at the Mardi Gras, and they're kind of the hit performers. So just very talented. But the respect that his players had to keep the program going, or we were there on the night they named the field after him. And so the amount of people that came back to pay, pay the respects to Murray and speak, and just from all different places now, because he would draw from Lloyd to Maidstone, like Kent Staniforth played for Murray, to Senlac, to pretty big area, but they could compete with Regina, Edmonton, Calgary, won provincials a number of times. So
and to the audience member, what's the population on Lashburn? 900?
The school would be a 1A school, so it's under 100 in the school, right?
Yeah, it's not
under 100 in the high school.
Yeah,
under 100 in the high school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Murray told me back then, he said that the leg up they had on all the big centers was they didn't start working on rugby until like grade 9. Maybe I'm off by a year. And they started kids in like grade 2 or 3. He said, so by the time we get to grade 9, we have 6 or 7 years on all these kids. We just know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so they can have all the kids in the world, but if they don't know how to play together, then you walk in this little town of Lashburn that, it's got 100 kids in the high school, runs them over.
I've heard Deb speak about this. The great thing about small town sports is you have some special coaches that teach individuals who maybe aren't necessarily would be athletes in a bigger center, but they need the bodies. And so it's amazing how sometimes these coaches can make, take somebody who maybe you didn't think they were an athlete and teach them what they need to know about the game. And sometimes they become like really top end players, and they never would have had that opportunity if it wasn't for starting in a town or on a team where they just need you to fill out the uniform.
Before we get to that conversation, because I really want to ask about that, Chris, I better allow you to at least say a couple words.
I'm just listening.
Yeah, well,
this is great. So many of these points were great because it brought up memories in my head. So my history, I've been on here before, so we don't really need my full history, I don't think. But
true.
Grew up in Kitscoty, so my dad was a teacher. We had a really cool thing in Kitscoty as well, that all of the teachers were kind of brought in to coach. And it was more that way back in the day. If you were hired, they expected you to coach a sport. And all of the teachers all had their kids within 3 years. I don't know what happened during those years, but so I had a bunch of friends that were all teachers' kids. And so my life was going with dad to school at 7 a.m. and then being a badminton practice, being a volleyball practice, being a bat boy, being on the bench at hockey. So I was a little sport rat, just hauled around all the time. And then that translated into, at early ages, I played all the sports, just like Morg said, volleyball, cross country, hockey. I didn't start playing basketball till later, and basketball ended up being the sport. I think I started in grade 9, and that's the sport I ended up going and playing university in. But I was just around coaches and teachers all the time. And I think you pick up so many cool things just being in that environment and just seeing it. And all of my dad's athletes were like my role models. I just emailed one here this year, Corey Woke. He played goal for the Blazers, and He would have been 8 or 9 years older than me. And I just remember all these memories of me shooting pucks out in the driveway. And my brother didn't maybe have the work ethic that I wanted him to have. So I'd shoot pucks by myself all the time.
Yeah.
And Corey was playing juniors, and he would put on his gear and come put down a sheet of puck board, and he would play goal. And I would just shoot on him, and he'd come out. He didn't need to do that. And he would come out for hours. And just do that I'm sure his mom told him to do it or something, but like he just walked across the street and did that. So I think sport's so cool because it can change your whole life. As Morg's talking about those kids that wouldn't have been on a team and end up being a part of a team, and it changes their trajectory. So, yeah, I had a cool experience that way. So I've been coaching in this community since I came back from university, assistant coach for a year at Lakeland, and then I head coached the women's basketball team for 17 years. I also head coached our U18 AAA baseball team. I've had assistant coached our U16 Liner softball team. I've coached U7 hockey with you. I've helped out with U11 hockey. I'm now coaching U11B girls fastball, which is awesome. It's a real test of my patience. But you know what? I came home from practice last week and I was like, these girls got me. Like, I like this crew now. Like, I like this little group of girls. And then I'm coaching the U18 AAA Lancers here this year. So I've been able to coach a lot of different things. I do remember my first coaching experience when I started head coaching in college, and I was 24 years old. And at that time, I think like lots of young coaches, maybe when you come out of playing, I thought I knew everything. And the older you get, the more you realize you know nothing, and you just constantly need to keep learning, right? But as a young coach, yes, I got all the answers, and then you realize, holy moly, I don't know how to do any of this stuff or translate it to these athletes and figure out what makes them click. So, yeah, that's my story.
Okay, that is the now it can become a true roundtable. So don't please bring it back to me. I'm just gonna seed the question and let you guys debate this or talk about it. You were talking about rugby and how in small towns sometimes the athlete becomes the athlete. So one of the things I've noticed in coaching really young sports is at the start it isn't elite, right? You're not paying whatever the number is anymore to go play elite hockey. You're just playing U7 hockey, which means everybody and their kids comes and plays. And so you got like the superstar who could score, and we bribed him with Timbits to get my son his first goal this year, and he must have worked harder that day. Shout out to Teague, because he worked harder that day than I've ever seen, and he's a good little worker, but he tried getting Casey the puck over and over and over and over again. Then they finally scored, and everybody let off a big cheer, and that was Timbits that did that. My question is, you got a bunch of athletes, and then you got a bunch of, I don't know what to call them, because I'm like, under certain circumstances, I feel like they might learn something new and they might start going. But how on earth do you unlock that lockbox of different children at such a young age where they come and, I go back to they started kindergarten or they started grade 1 or there's things going on you couldn't possibly imagine, and they come out and they lollygag into the infield and they lollygag back to the bench, and you're like, what? Do I yell at the kid? Do I not yell at the kid? I don't know. That's where I want to start. How do you work around, because the kids that are go-getters, you don't have to hardly prod them. It's actually more of trying to rein them in half the time. Wondering about the other kid. The kid that kind of maybe slips through the cracks as you go up and plays City League or whatever it was back in your day.
Well, I think that's excuse me, sorry, phone's ringing here. That's probably a question that I'm not sure, anybody would have the real answer for. That's a good one. But just some takeaways I would have, Shaun, is I think coaching on the flip side of trying to grow the athlete or having all the bodies to fill out a team in a small town, sometimes I would say that my toughest coaching, most rewarding in many ways, but the toughest spot to coach would be coaching in Hillmont, just because there's 3 different levels of hockey player, or in a small town, like whether it's volleyball, basketball, whatever your sport is that on each of those teams there's a tier 1 player, tier 2, tier 3. And so that's hard, because if you're trying to make everybody feel involved in, and I believe at a young age you should all get, good opportunity to play. But if you're just good enough you're competitive and you're trying to you have a chance to win a league title, and maybe that's, just even the step league. It's sometimes harder to divvy out that ice, and you've got players that are just chomping at the bit. They're little gamers, and some that are pretty disinterested. My first year of coaching out there, we had a young fellow that he would go out and face down onto the ice because he was ice fishing. He was looking for ice, or looking for fish below the ice surface.
I like that kid.
And so it's just so. I don't think that that's not an easy one to sort out. At that time, you're trying to shuffle around your players to level things out. I know in some communities, and I would name them too, from Irma, Dewberry, Edam, some communities sort that out real early. It appeared to me that if you weren't real interested or keen, you didn't play. And that's, each place to their own philosophy, but because there are some players who where you start isn't always where you finish. And I really think that as an athlete, or even as a learner in school, after puberty, lots of changes will happen for an adolescent, and I've seen lots of kids who aren't super aggressive and when they're involved in a game or an overly good work ethic, but then when they go through body changes and puberty, and as a 15, 16-year-old, we have a different athlete.
I think sort of what I'm hearing you say is, you've got these group of kids, and you've got some really skilled kids, and you've got some really unskilled kids, maybe never been introduced, maybe never had that skill set at home, anyone playing ball with them or hockey or whatever. But I do remember, and it wasn't even necessarily that I was coaching, but seeing those groups, especially in hockey, and they're all on the ice, some can't even skate. But I think for me as a coach, what you look at that point, especially when at the younger age, they're not doing that rep right away, is build the skills in any way that you can with games. Like anything that would simulate, what you might do in the game, but they're unbeknown to them. And I remember some of the practices that I would go and even watch, and, they were doing all sorts of things with balls and different things, even on the ice. And nobody really knew that they were learning the skills. But it was amazing that you had to have in hockey the patience of importance would be getting the young athlete to skate. If you can't skate, you can't play that game. So number one would be even just getting them to skate, play tag, whatever it is. Even the skilled players in a situation like that love to play tag. In ball, it was the same thing. Some could throw and catch. Some, didn't even know how to hold the ball. I mean, I remember I hadn't coached for a few years, and I was asked to come and coach these, would have been U10 or around that age group. And they hadn't really played ball a whole bunch. So I had them all lined up, throwing the ball, showing them how to throw the ball. And, like any questions, you guys, hand goes up. And one of the players said, are we going to have a mascot? And I was like, oh, where am I? And it was like that realization that what I thought was important, like obviously for them. And I did jokingly say, yeah, we'll be you. But then I realized it was just, you have to take all of that in with what you're doing. And we just did that, like in practice. It was just steady, those skills. And the older kids, you can do higher level skills, like the ones that have the skill set. But I sort of always did my coaching there. And then if we got into a game, then it was a different level. Like that part was left for later. But, you did the best you can. You put in the players. And it's so different. Like what you're talking about, I think about most of my coaching was what they would consider rep level. And so you had competitive people. They tried out for the team. And, like your lowest skilled player on the team was still very skilled. So I think it's just a whole different mindset that you have to have when you have that group of kids. You are growing those athletes. And so for those that appear to be not interested, how can you make it fun? You know, I mean, they're not all going to be top athletes, but I can guarantee you this. Unless you're playing individual sport, there is no top athlete that will be able to play without that supporting crowd. And so whatever their level is, and I mean, they always say there's no I in team, and to me, that's what that means is I can love a sport, but if I can't have a body of people that want to play that game with me, I don't have a game. So it's really important, and I mean, even for those kids that have the higher level skill, they need those other people on that ice, or they don't have a team. So,
What's your favorite hockey drill, Shaun?
So me and Chris coached together one year of U7 hockey, or my oldest and your oldest.
My oldest too, yeah.
Yeah. Played together. And I was, it was the first time I ever coached. So I was, I look around and I got you and I had Coulter and
There's someone else really good as well out there.
oh man, that's terrible. Anyways, I'm looking at these two guys. I'm like, you guys are like you've been doing this forever. Why am I the coach? No, you got this. I'm like, no, you must have a drill or two. So we took wolves and sheep from basketball. Basketball has this game and wolves and sheep. Anyways, anyone who's been on the ice with me over the last, I think it's been 4 seasons now. Holy man. I think it's been 4 seasons of U7. I don't know if I didn't think my sanity could handle that, but I think it has been. And one of the drills that I've kept has been wolves and sheep. It's been taken from a basketball court and put on the ice surface. And we've actually added in additional things, right? You start out without the puck and then you move towards where you have the puck. And all it is a very simple game of tag. It's just
perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
you have a pasture, you're safe. And they always love following the shepherd wherever it takes them. And then the wolves go and they try and steal the puck or tag them at the start when they can't skate. Yeah. And,
they got so much better at skating from that.
I tell you what, as a coach, I have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm
But they're not aware of their learning.
No.
Yeah.
They're just having fun.
They're just having fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing, especially when you're talking about those younger ages, and Deb touched on it. It's you hook them with fun, right? And you give them the skills and they don't know they're doing them because you do have that wide range, right? And think about that team we're on. We had some kids that were going hard for hockey already. We had my daughter who was just there to make a friend and just, lollygagging around. Like there's a wide range, but if it's fun and they grow a love for the sport, who knows what happens later on, right? You want to keep the biggest base of people playing your sport at a young age for the filter down later. So I think the biggest thing with that range is keeping it fun, like make it fun. They want to come back. You just try to hook them at that young age.
Well, let's flip it around then. You had a son who would have been at the top of our entire age group. How did you control, him? I assume at times he's like, "Come on, let's do this," and the rest of the group is over here, and it's like, "Well, you got to come back here just a little bit." When you're talking about the elite athlete of the group, how did you get them to buy into the group?
Well, I think it depends on the elite athlete. Like maybe people wouldn't know this, and I'll have to answer to this later. But Clark did not see himself as an elite athlete. He was always concerned every year about making a team, or so he just loved being around the other people. He just loved the game. He didn't care about what you were doing. He never demanded, like, I need more. And, to be honest, if he wanted more, he would go with his dad and they would get some rink time and do things like one-on-one and that type of thing. But his joy was just being out with whatever group of guys that were out there, and never, ever complained about, I wasn't doing enough. I mean, he just thought whatever he was doing was enough. So I guess we were fortunate that way that, often we would tell him, you have to, be, feel like you trust yourself that you've got these skills, but he never did. like he honored people around him quite a bit. And, that's just who he was. But he did his own practice. Like I remember one time we took him out to Bud Miller Park, and I dropped him off at 9 a.m, and then I came back at noon, and he'd already played 3 or 4 different shinny games with different groups. I had to drag him off the ice to get him to eat, and he was mad at me. And then, then he would play till it was dark. I'd come get him at night, and he was mad at me again. Like couldn't I just stay 1 more hour? So I think he fed himself just by what he did on his own. I mean, in ball, that was a kind of a different thing because people worked in their own areas of whether they're outfield, infield, pitchers, catchers, whatever. So, even if you're a top athlete in that, you kind of just do your work in that area and improve on it, and you give, whatever you can. We didn't have that problem. I guess that would be my answer,
I would add to that, Deb, I think it's also, it's an opportunity, as obviously you guys did in raising Clark. It's navigating that. It's an opportunity to teach those life lessons on how to be a good teammate and to be humble and to and because they can, a good athlete can inspire other players to be to raise their game or to enjoy the game and to keep playing and to get the best out of them. And I think it helps them to be, it's an opportunity for them to grow their character side of being a young person too, to moving forward when that you have to be a good teammate and sometimes that's sharing it a little bit. And
yeah, no, I agree. I'd like to take credit for it, but honestly, like he just wanted to be one of the guys in the group.
Yeah.
So I think he just loved the team stuff. He just loved being with whatever group, how you guys were. Whatever group you were with, those are your best friends for that season. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it could be a problem, but I would say I was very fortunate that I didn't have to deal with that.
I do think that elite athletes usually figure out a way to get more ice time or court time or whatever it is. And they usually end up drawing someone with them. So like you talk about shinny, like I remember going to shinny all the time because I was playing with all the older boys. And I really think just playing is lost now on this youth generation. Yes. They don't get to go out and play and do those types of things. But whatever sport it was, eventually like 1 or 2 or 3 guys would start coming out every Sunday to shinny. They'd start skipping church like I was and going to shinny and just playing for 3 hours or whatever. Same thing when I had like basketball. I finally got, my brother to come in every once in a while if he could wait. Like those athletes tend to draw people to them and they find a way how to motivate themselves, even if they're not necessarily getting that all the time in the practice. I think that there's just a drive with a lot of those athletes. My personal opinion on that. But
you mentioned this generation and how things have changed. You've all coached. I'm not dating any of you, but you've coached a lot of different age groups. How have you seen? I mean, obviously you've seen changes. I mean, since I went to college, I didn't have a cell phone, and now, I'm told that a kid has to have a cell phone at X age, and I'm like, I'm going to fight that war, but I'll wait until they get there. I mean, how have the athletes changed, and do you think your coaching tactics have had to adapt to the changes in generations?
You guys have the most. I'll go last on this again.
I think that as a parent group, the change has been that parents had expectations of their kids to go out there and work hard and take their lumps. And that's not the case right now. We sort of are in a situation, and it's not just in coaching, it's in school, it's in life, where for some reason we don't want people to have to be upset about anything. And, that's what builds adversity. I mean, you have to learn. And I'd rather, my students or my athletes learn at a young age that it's not always going to be a great day. Like sometimes we're going to win, sometimes we're going to lose, sometimes you're going to play, sometimes you're not going to play. And that's a part of life that I think that we're losing out on. I mean, you'll never get fair play. Like, I can treat you fairly, but it doesn't mean you're going to play all the time, or, you know, you can't sort of balance the books and say everybody had the same amount of time. Now, especially when you're in rep situations, like I think if I'm coaching and it's growing kids in a program, everybody's going to play, everybody's, going to go hard. But I think when I was coaching, and I mean, you can speak to that, Shaun, because I coached you, everybody knew that they were going to get to play, but it didn't mean that they were going to get to play equal time. And the parents knew that also. It was kind of an accepted rule. So even if you did have to confront some of that, it was not, I would say, as it is today. So different scenario. We're trying to help students or athletes learn skills and to play a game, but we don't want to hurt their feelings. And there's a fine line there where I think it's all right to take a little hard knocks. I would rather all of my athletes take them at a young age while they have the support around them than to have those hard knocks when they're on their own.
I found, so coaching U9 baseball the last 2 years, this year we implemented, like a bunch of different rules, but in the first year of like coaching it, we now it's not rep, it's just city league,
yep.
But we didn't do outs. And I found, so I'm butchering this. So like if you hit the ball and you got thrown at first, half the time we'd keep the person on first so they could learn how to run the bases. That was the thought process. But then I spent more energy trying to explain to my son or his friend or any of the group of the team when they threw the person out why they weren't out. And I'm like, if the rule takes more time to try and explain to the team of why this is going, I think the kid it's okay to have a couple tears, you got thrown out and carry on because it's part of the game. And I've found this year we've added in outs and there has been some tears. But I find that tears are very short-lived because once they realize they can get the other team out and get in and start batting, man, then everybody's engaged. But, when you go back to society and how we don't want to hurt any feelings. I don't think coach wants to go out and hurt feelings.
No.
You want kids to have fun. But at some point, the rules of the game have to come in because that's what makes the game fun. I don't know. I mean, I'm just new to this, so maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't think so. I think that you want to be careful how much you massage reality. And I still think sport's the greatest venue to teach those lessons that if you don't work hard, you don't play as much. If you don't have the same commitment, if you choose to come to every second practice, you just don't have maybe you miss a game. I think that's what we all should want as parents or coaches out of sport, an opportunity to grow people. And so some of those reality lessons, they're important. I think that for today's athlete, I think it's hard. With social media, you talked about phones. I can't imagine, and I know how addictive they can be even for adults. I catch myself at times on the phone too much, and so I think that's a huge stressor for young people. And that's just changing the playing field in every way, knowing how to manage that and manage your mental health with social media and the need to respond and to I wouldn't even know where to begin with some of it, but that's again going back to sport. It's still the best place to get some of those lessons, or to have a coach to help teach you some of those things, that those soft skills, that when somebody sends you a text, the expectation is respond, and not with an emoji. Or when you see your teammate or one of the coaching staff, you look them in the eye and you say hello or greet them. I even find at school, having to teach kids when they get off the bus and walking in, you can say good morning to some kids, and good kids, but some don't know to say hello back. And so I think the role of the teacher or the coach it's even more important today to teach those soft skill lessons, and because they're not getting them. Unfortunately.
What do you equate that to, Mark? Why aren't they getting them? Is that just the phone? Is that the role of devices?
Yeah, I think it's a huge role, but there's got to be more to it than just that. I don't know. Maybe somebody else, but I would just add also that, I think that it's evolved too. Like, I can remember as a student, if you messed up in class or you got into trouble, writing lines on the chalkboard, or even in elementary school being in, maybe I'm not.
We got a
you're
ruler.
not
we got a couple ruler hits.
Yeah,
in our
right.
group. Yeah,
I would stand in the corner.
Miss McGale spanked me.
Or
we'll never forget that.
Who?
Miss McGale.
Okay.
Yeah,
some names.
She was an old crusty bird.
There's a happy medium there. Like like you said, where you went through that time when it was not. I don't think, I even look at it now, would never be acceptable. I mean, I was a principal for so many years. Never did I ever strike a student, but I think that there's a way of within, that's sort of a coaching role too, is coaching people and getting them to take responsibility. And I have a great story, and I shared it with Morg, but this is when Clark was playing in Medicine Hat. Willie Desjardins was his coach. Just an awesome man. And I remember we were at a game one time, and you could say Clark wasn't that focused. I think he got a 10-minute, and it wasn't for good behavior. Anyway, after the game, Willie said to him, I want to see you. They played the next day. I want to see you the next morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. Bring a teammate. So when Clark came back after the meeting, I said to him, well, are you playing, today? And he goes, yes. But then he told me the story. So he goes in with his teammate, and Willie talks to Clark about how he wasn't playing for the team and he got distracted and whatever. And so this I love the way he did this. He said, so here's your choice. He said, you can take a 1-game suspension, because the league wasn't suspending him, but the team was, Willie was. And he said, you can take a 1-game suspension, or you can choose to play tonight. Now, we were there, so that might have been a factor. But you can choose to play tonight. But if you do this again, then it's a 2-game. And he chose to play. So the beauty of that I saw was Clark didn't leave that meeting going, oh, the coach is a loser, Willie turned that on to him. You take responsibility and you commit. Why was the teammate there? Oh, probably as a witness too, but also you're committing to that teammate. And he sat in that room and heard you say that you're going to play for the team tonight. And I thought, how empowering is that? Like, if you think about all of your athletes that you work with, the ones that are, they need that talk, because, it's not everybody on the team that creates a problem. But if they're off the rail or whatever, you just think about how that can rein them in, but they don't leave angry. You've had a good opportunity to share that you're obviously not pleased with the choices they made. But, I just think there's a way that we can always do that in coaching. That tool, I just loved the way he did that. And I think I loved it because that's how I worked with people. I just felt like it was so nice to see that he had embraced that. But I mean, he demanded hard work, commitment. I mean, I think that's the whole thing. Maybe the difference with some of the kids, but I know I coached young athletes that didn't really want to be there. The parents brought them there. And so that's a struggle, just trying to engage them. And like you said, Chris, keep it fun, But I liked the way Willie handled that whole situation. I think it's important to make your athletes responsible for the choices they make, but in a respectful way.
Well, I wasn't a poster child, so when I think of the coaches and teachers that I still hold on a place on a pedestal today, is the ones that approached me that way with discipline or with coaching, is that that with grace and were hard and firm, but I still had it was left me feeling like coach or teacher likes me and cares about me, but this is a life lesson, and we both left feeling a sense of mutual respect, I guess. Knowing Willie too,
I was just gonna say my brother-in-law played for Willie and loved Willie. He's got very good stories.
Special guy.
Yeah. Okay, to Morg's point, because it made me think about one incident that we had with our players that was super impactful on two girls. I'll tell the story after, but the instant gratification has been a huge change. The checking the likes and the posts and stuff like that. At least over my years of coaching college, because they see everyone signing or getting this. So they see the posts or player of the games or whatever. And that affects the mental side of things a lot. Now,
if they don't get enough likes?
Yeah, if they don't get enough likes, for sure. And like, I've had players come to my office and ask why Morg was on the cover of the poster or why so-and-so was like, these things to them matter a lot. And in this is what I'm talking about. Our generation, we did not care or know or need.
Well, we didn't have any likes.
Yes, no,
we didn't have any posts.
So, so that's like the first thing I would say that's changed over my time. Once again, it's probably changed more over your guys' period of time. The other thing is, kids aren't really allowed to fail anymore, and I think this is I'm a parent, so at fault as well. I don't think the parents let the kids fail and figure out how to tread water a lot of times, because there's so many other options. Like just going through this hockey thing right now, no one really wants to try out for our team. They just want a spot. Everyone wants a guaranteed spot. And if not, they got this option or this option or this option or this option, and they're all available. And so these kids are used to going through this process of like having all these other options. And I think some of the most impactful things for me and a lot of athletes is when you did get cut or when you did fail, because then you have to work your ass off to get on that next level or to make the team the next year, right? So those are the things that I've noticed. On that note, we had an incident. It would have been about 2018 or 2019. Jaden Cook, and she's told this story. She was a freshman, and this is when we had some good teams, but we didn't win. And I couldn't really put my finger on it because I felt like our talent was probably close and we just couldn't do it in playoffs. And she came in, and Haley Summers, and they ended up playing for me for almost 8 years with COVID, so maybe a little bit before that. And we do a thing after a drill. You shoot free throws, so it's like simulating pressure, right? If you don't make it, you got like 2 down and backs as a group, right? So you got to get 75%. So the team says, if we don't hit 75%, we do 2 down and backs. So Tori Dugan was out at the time. She had an ACL, and the girls shoot, and usually I go around and just try to talk to people. And Tori goes to me and the assistant coach. She's like, I think the girls are cheating. And I'm like, no. She's like, there's some girls that put up 2 that didn't make any shots. And I was like, no way. Like, our culture's better than that. So I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what. Next time we shoot, after the drill's done, I'm going to go in the equipment room, pretend like I'm grabbing something. Let me know if it happens again. So anyways, I go in the equipment room. It happens. So then I call him on it right there, and we have a big discussion. Anyways, I talked to Jade and Haley in the office about like accountability and like how this isn't right. And both girls are crying and stuff. And I got a phone call. I never really got phone calls from parents at college. You just don't deal with parents ever, really. I got a phone call from her mom. So her mom and dad both played university basketball at University of Regina. And she phoned me and she said, thank you so much for today, for calling Jade out. This is going to be such an impactful moment in her life. Thanks for talking to the girls afterwards about this. She's like, she needs to understand her decisions have consequences. She's like, I think this is going to make her so much better. Of course, after that, one of our hardest workers, she was an all-star for us, played forever. But it was like one of those cool things that like phone call from a parent, you're like, oh my gosh, like what's happening here? But she made her kid take accountability for cheating and setting the group up for failure, and I thought that was a pretty like cool thing that happened. I was still like middle of the road in my career. Yeah.
Dumb question. And you coaching the Lancers, maybe you and more. You could all three. When I was growing up, you go try out for a team. It was always in the fall. I feel like you had conditioning camp, and then you went and tried out, and then they posted the results, and sometimes you made it, sometimes you didn't, and that was just kind of the way it is. This whole like skating for the entire summer, and is that new, or am I just getting old, or is that something?
I can't tell you when it started, but I can tell you right now our fall camp is August 24th to 28th. But we've skated. We had a main camp, and we've signed some kids, and we skate twice a week. We're done we got to skate on Saturday, then we're done till August. But it's you don't show up like and hope to get a spot. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Lots of these kids are phoning asking. I'm like, I don't know. Like, you got to show up. You got to try out. Like, you're on the bubble. Like,
I told the story. Yeah. I got invited to Hillmont Grad over the, I don't know what that was. But anyways, it doesn't matter. And I told the story of going to the Kindersley Clippers tryout, right? Get invited to Kindersley Clippers. Used to get all the letters in the mail. Loved it. Mom would drive me there. I thought it was so cool. I'm going to try out for Kindersley Clippers. I thought I had a good camp. But at this point, I'm 5'7" now on a good day. Let's say I'm 5'4". No, I was pretty much, I haven't grown. Who am I kidding? I was like 5'7". And the coach says to me, "Man, you were a good player." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go. All right." And he goes, "If you were 4 inches taller, you'd be on this team. Sorry, we got to let you go." And I walked out the door, and I'm like, what the heck was that? And I told the story because, getting cut, I got cut an awful lot. Mom drugged me everywhere, and I tried out everywhere. And it kind of gave me a little bit of thick skin. And then the other thing I noticed in doing the podcast and talking to all these athletes is it only takes one to believe. And if one believes in you, you will run through a brick wall for them. That's the coach I interviewed at the Centennial Cup, and I one of Hope out in Lashburn when he got picked up by Kelowna. I'm like, he just needed a team to believe in him. It wasn't about going to Kelowna. It was for the team wanted him and saw something nobody else saw. And if you can see that in a kid, especially one that's been cut or kicked around a little bit, and nobody's, you're not that good, or whatever they say to him, because you can have a bad camp, right? Like I'm sure Clark has stories going and having a bad camp and getting, no, you're just not with it this week. Okay, fair enough. But one coach believes in you, man. That is it. That's like the Energizer bunny getting, let's go, and away you run. Anyways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Has it been like that for a long time, Mark? This hockey, this dynamic? Sorry, I wasn't speaking to the mic.
No.
Yeah, no, I think all elite sports have gone that way. I see it with volleyball and basketball. All sports are
pay to play.
Seem to be year round and become elite sports is, I think, synonymous with money, and it's pretty hard to balance being involved in other things. And you hear lots of elite or professional athletes who didn't grow up that way and who speak to that and say that, what a shame, or that tell young people you shouldn't be in just one sport.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you can't make a top U18 AAA team if you aren't on the ice all the time now, and you aren't putting in the extra hours or going with a skills coach. And I think it's taken away from the enjoyment for a lot of young athletes. That as the pyramid closes, and you keep very, very few get to play it at a professional level. And I think the numbers I last heard were there's more athletes that quit sports altogether. When I think of guys I played hockey with who still love going out on a Monday night or getting out on the ice, like I still love it. But I see younger generations that their hockey ends before their time, before they necessarily have to, and they're completely done. And you might know some. Well, you're maybe closer in age to me, Shaun, but I do see young athletes. More and more, because of how busy it is and how year round, that the joy of playing, it's gone, and they end up, for many, too many, not being lifelong active people, which is something you should get out of sports. So at the end of the day, you should want to still. It's your health and wellness. Still want and chance to be with friends and
Well,
and
some of
mix
the
a little
fun,
bit.
some
And
of the funnest hockey I've ever played came back in my hometown.
Yeah.
I mean, which is of all the levels I ever played, you know, for senior A and well, I don't even know, was it senior A? I think it was senior A in Saskatchewan. For that to be some of the funnest is kind of funny, you know. And then now, as I get older, we play in the Never Sweats tournament, and I just like playing with the three older brothers. And Chris plays on our team, right? And we have this like merry band of men that get together. Corey Dowlin's on the team, Morg, right? It's a merry band of men come together for 3 games over a weekend. We have a blast. I'm like, I can't imagine if I'd never kept going and kept putting on the skates. What a sad day. And yet, I'm sure my mother can tell these stories, and I'm, you know, like she drugged me to a lot of places I did not want to go because it was starting to become, you know, every weekend or I don't know how many times in summer. And it probably wasn't even that bad back then because you couldn't, you know, like now you can skate every day.
Yeah.
They do skate every day.
Yeah, and then they're in camps every weekend. Like these kids are in camps every weekend.
So
Like
the skill level's up here.
Yes.
But I sure find a lot of, I mean, when we're recruiting, we're looking for, our number one thing is for competitive. We want competitive people that, you know, that kind of that extra fight in them, willing to block shots and just not lose a battle and win at all costs type of an athlete. And I think the more, you know, I think you lose a little bit of that with just so much that you never get a chance to get away. Do you remember what it was like when the ice went out in the spring, and when you got back on late October, you just couldn't wait to get out on the ice.
That's
You're
right.
just chomping at the bit. And I don't know if I see many young people just can, you know, that same sense of joy of dragging somebody off the ice at Bud Miller or Needham with natural ice. They don't get out.
You know where I see the kids where you got to drag them off is the ball field.
Yeah.
And you think it's a short little season. They get out on the ball field. They love it. They play for 2 hours. And then I watch them, and none of them want to leave. All the parents want to leave. I mean, it's like 8 o'clock at night. You're like, these kids don't want to leave. And I'm like, fairness, I don't, you know, I can sympathize.
And ball's also perfect for that because it's got the right amount of the socialization. You're in the dugout with everyone. You're talking and stuff. Then you go on the field and you focus. Then you're back in, like, girls especially, I find, such a great sport for girls because they get that social interaction and then they go out and stuff. And it's nice outside.
Do you have the rule no crying in baseball?
We've had this talk twice. I don't know if you've had it, but we had the talk twice because I had a picture. The tear came out. I'm like, we're not doing this. We're not crying out here. This is not happening. Anyway.
But, you know, there seems to be an extra pressure on the young athletes today to be that top player. I know, like, and I'll refer to myself playing ball, Lashburn Bluebird ball. We came up, I mean, we were a grown team. Like Doug Abrosimoff, probably my best coach ever, mentor, colleague, the whole bit. But he grew a team. And there were players on that team who would never play ball, but we needed them to. And they played key positions because we needed them to. And I remember going to nationals, and I mean, the other teams couldn't get over the fact that where is Lashburn, you know, and like, does it have? It has an elevator. Like, it was just, they had no idea about how could we even be at nationals. And I can tell you, if you matched player by player in position, we lost, but we had heart. Like, you had to play as a team because you needed each other, and we had heart, and we had that grit, and we had that no quit. And I think there's so many distractions, like you were saying, the phones, shopping, just hanging out.
The fact that you can have Saturday morning cartoons whenever you want, at any time, for as long as you want.
Just distractions.
The screen.
Or, you know, going to festivals or going to, you know, whatever. You're not going to commit to the team. You're going to do that first. And I find that a lot of the athletes are tired. Like, there's no time out for them. Like, I remember coaching, you know, there'd be hockey season, and then there was that period of time, maybe only 3 weeks before ball season. I remember a lot of the students or the athletes would say, I'm not going to play ball. But after 3 weeks of sitting around, they're out there. You know, and then they love that game. I mean, we used to practice, like you say, till it'd be a 2-hour practice, and then they want to do home run derbies, from the pitch mound. So you're out at the park for 4 hours. And I mean, that's athlete initiate. They're initiating that. You're taking them out there for the practice, and you're done. They want more. They just want to hang out and now have some fun and actually control the scenario. Like, it's not somebody coaching them. They're just out there having fun. And if you take that out of any sport, I think it's hard. And like Chris, you were saying, they don't want to try out, but they want a spot. But it's almost like, well, if I don't get that, I'll go do this. In my time when I played, and all of us in this room, we didn't have those options. No. Like, you either played ball. I mean, soccer wasn't even big then. Right. You either played ball, baseball, or fastball or softball, or you didn't do anything. And so you ran between the winter sport and the summer sport, and you had a timeout. You had a break in there, enough time to want to get going again. Well,
you talk about the care. I think we just saw that on the biggest stage, Florida, right? You see how much those guys care about each other, and as us all as athletes, I can pick the 2 fastball teams, that you could feel it. The guys loved each other that I played on. My 1 year at Lakeland, we had that, and then coaching. I can pick out the 3 different years where, like, you could feel it early, like, oh, these guys actually love each other. Like, it just, I don't know how to explain it, but you can feel it happening even when you're an athlete. There's just a different feeling, more kind of said about the rugby, like going to war. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I question our players on, whenever it's a year that's shaky with culture, is we do a questionnaire, and one of the questions is, who would you pick in a bar fight? And I'm always interested to see who they would want. Of course, the girls have never been in a bar fight, so it's more like a guy's question, but who would you want there? And if you see more than like 1 or 2 names popping up, I think it means like they know a lot of people have their back. We ask a lot of those hidden questions, but yeah, it's cool when you feel that happening. It is.
Yeah. I'd take Deb in the bar fight.
Think about your best teams. Was your best teams the most connected, I bet, that you played
on? Yeah. Larry, who I interviewed at the Centennial Cup, we had a year where we went 42-10, I think, and then went on to a Dudley Hewitt Cup in Ontario. And we were a bunch of misfits. We were all been cut and kicked around. We were a bunch of Saskatchewan boys. We weren't big enough. We weren't strong enough. And he just like lit a fire under that because he'd been kicked around junior A. And so we just had this identity of we weren't supposed to be there, and we weren't supposed to be the best, and we weren't, and they told you you're too small, and they, and so we fought bigger guys, I don't know why, back then everybody was bigger than me, but, you used to fight guys who were 6 foot, not think anything of it, because that's just what was asked of the team, and if you didn't do it, the guy next to you was doing it, and we just had this idea, and that was a fun team to play on. The Hillmon one that sits up there was a fun year, too. I got to be defense partner with Brew for, it's close to 10 years. And I, as a defenseman, I never got that, ever. You come onto a team, and if you're one of the stronger, you always get paired with the weaker, which is fine. And then every second year, you lose part of your D, and it starts all over again. So you play with the same D partner for a year. You're lucky if you get 2. And so in Hillmon, one of the things that I love is I got to play with Brew for about 10 years. And so I knew what he was going to do. And he probably knew what I was going to do. And that was just like, I never got that. That's something you just don't get in other teams. And there was a feeling that year because of a whole bunch of guys coming in, Shezzy and Dugan and Pacharka. And, but that really meant something because back then, Hillmon hadn't won since 1978, I think, if memory serves me correct. It was 37 years. Gord Redden had come back from playing in the Detroit farm system, and they won. And then it had gone 37 years. So there was, I don't know, I talked to the kids in Hillmon about it. Like, you take Hillmon wherever you go, and you take Lloydminster wherever you go, because I think Lloyd, although it's Lloyd, is the communities that surround, I I grew up going to Lashburn, you know, like they had the Spurs there.
Yeah.
They won a
Which is-
national
yeah.
championship, right?
Yep, yep.
And like this area has kind of been the outcast of both provinces. I know it isn't, but you know, we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So you got to take care of each other. And that's what a sports team does. That's what a community does. And so, I don't know, I've had a couple of years where you can just feel it. It's fun to be in. It's just you're fun to show up to the rink. You're happy when every guy walks through the dressing room. There's nobody that goes, Bob's back.
Yeah.
I can't wait for Bob to open it, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever. We just didn't have that. And, you know, when you go to the Florida Oilers final, man, I wanted to hate Florida. But every time Paul Maurice spoke, I'm like, I could play for that coach. Like, holy crap. And, you know, you hate
100%.
Tkachuk and you hate Marchand. You hate guys like that. But the truth of the matter is that they're playing for us. You'd love it. Like, how
love
hurt
them.
was
Yeah.
Tkachuk?
Yeah.
Like, they asked Tkachuk, what's the injury? And he goes, I'm going to enjoy the night. You'll find out soon enough, and that'll be all you guys talk about. Basically what he said. So he's hurt. And he finds
Flexors off his hip, torn off his hip.
torn off his hip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said there was times I thought about quitting. For a guy to say that, you know, like that isn't an easy, you know, and that's the guy you're going to war with. Every time he walked in the dressing room, like, yeah, Chuck's back, baby, let's go. Like, he just, what a cool thing to watch, even though the Oilers lost. Like, it sucks, you know, but, you know, as a fan, as an athlete, you can see that with Florida.
It's fun,
Well, even
fun to
at
watch.
the end when they gave the Stanley Cup to the first time
Yes, yeah.
Stanley, I don't know if they had that mapped out, but wow, what a statement of
They
team.
for sure talked about
Barkov,
that,
yeah,
didn't
they said that Barkov talked about it,
Did
but
he?
even more, like the guys that were scratched got their gear on, and they got
Yes.
it before other
Yes.
guys too. Like I thought the same thing. I thought that
And
was a
that's
really
team.
cool. Yes,
That's
yeah.
team. And that's how you build team, that everybody's important. And I think, you know, back to your question about elite athletes, I think they're the ones that have to bring that team. Bring it so that everybody feels like when you come in the door, you're important. And not, you know, like this group sits here and this group sit here. Like everybody sits in that room because you're a team. And I remember one of the things I did in coaching, it was really important to me, is I never believed in this first year, second year. You know, so when we formed a team, we were the team. Nobody was a first year, nobody was a second year. So second years didn't have, you know, the elite status. And I remember getting called out on that a couple of times with players. Well, last year we had to be sorry for your luck on this team. If we're going to be a team, we're a team, and just always kept
Sorry
that.
for your luck. That's a
Yeah.
great line.
But you know, you can't build a team if you have two levels.
No, I would agree.
Yeah.
And you said I think that's a coach's job to set to.
Yep.
You know, you're successful if you can manage a way and find a way to have that type of culture and to have elite players, your what's considered your elite players, to buy into that. But I think to finding a way that everybody feels valued is so important. And obviously Florida was able to do that. And there's things they did that obviously showed that. Things I struggle with individual awards at the end of the year. I think they do more harm than good. And if you're not careful, I find with your leadership group, putting that little symbol on a jersey doesn't mean much, and other than being somebody that talks to the ref. I find over the years that's done more harm than good. The leaders in the room, you all should have an opportunity to lead.
And everybody knows who they are.
And they know who
Yeah.
who needs to lead in this way, or who is the person that speaks up. And I think that's an important role as a coach, is to try and find a way that the 25th player feels important.
Yeah.
One final question. I look at all three of you, and I think I'm right in this. You coach boys, you coach girls, you coach girls. Now, maybe you've also coached, the same sex. So I'm pointing out they've all coached the opposite sex. Was that difficult, or did you enjoy it right from the start, or was it something that you kind of fell into? Because I didn't think about it until I ran into you, and we started talking old bowl stories. I'm like, as a kid, that's maybe that was the standard. two women coaching a ball team and then going on and winning provincials. And, I got to, like Westerns and like on it went, right? Like I think we were really good. I don't know. I think we were. But regardless, I'm like, I hadn't really thought about it.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, you were.
Well, no, I personally was probably the 13th. I was surrounded.
You're on the team, though.
I was on the team, but I was surrounded by excellent athletes. Yeah. But nobody, Anyways, you've all coached the opposite sex. Was that a difficult thing, or did you notice, if you've coached both, have you noticed just like unique things that translate well to either or does it not matter?
Me personally, at school I coach co-ed teams, so my soccer and rugby teams are co-ed, and I don't find a big difference. I think there's athletes of both sexes that are just naturally driven and thrive in competition and are leaders, but and I don't find a big difference.
No, I would say the same. Like, I think you change depending on what their needs are, so you approach it differently. I think it depends. It doesn't even matter on the gender side of things. Like, you'll always deal with the one-on-ones. Like, even though you're a team, you still need to work with the individuals, that are there. And so I always found I needed to get to know them. I needed to find out what their needs are or what they were capable of. And I think the biggest thing is, and you said, is believe in them. Everyone that gets up to bat. I'll give you an example. When I played myself, the coaches I had, when I got up to bat, it wasn't if I was going to hit, it was where. Right. And it was like, it was anywhere from getting on base to a home run. Like, that was my mindset. But later on, when I went and had a new coach, and he would stand at third base and get your quota. Way different view. Like, now you're up to bat realizing that if you don't get your quota, you're not playing. So now it changes that I'm not thinking.
You had a coach say, get your quota?
Oh, yeah. I'm not
Interesting.
I'm not up to bat thinking, where am I going to hit? I'm like, I better hit.
Yeah.
And so those were my learnings from other coaches that I tried to take forward in when I was working in any capacity with young people, is that sometimes we say things, and whether he meant it or, well, he did mean it, but you can take that confidence out of them so quickly. And to me, that's the big thing. If you can build the confidence, no matter what group you're coaching, whether it's the little younger ones or whether it's the vets, I think it's just build the confidence of each of your players. And they will know their limits. Like, everyone will have limits. Like, you'll always have the ones that come with the skills. But I enjoy both.
Well, my first year coaching girls, I was 24, and I had players that were 24. So that was a challenge. And going out and recruiting, and I looked like I was 14 at the time. My first year recruiting was awful because no parents took me serious. I will say, coaching girls, they are much more willing. The relationship is different with girls. That part is really important. The relationship off the court or off the ice, whatever it is. I think that's more important than what I do on the floor or on the ice with girls. And they're easier to buy in to something together. Now, if you lose it, it's gone. But with girls, they're more naturally there. Guys, it takes a little bit more to get them there, I find. And, a lot of people always ask me the difference of coaching girls and guys in terms of, like, in a practice. I explain, if you tell a girl, and actually I think I talked to your husband about this one day, if you tell a girl to go to A to B, they will only go A to B. That is all they'll do. They'll never deviate. They will never do anything different because they're just aiming to please and do it exactly right. When you tell a boy to go to A to B, they will go everywhere but A to B. They will be all over the place and they'll be figuring it out. And maybe they get there, maybe they don't. But girls are very much, they lack a little more creativity. Just, I don't know if it's innate, And that's something that you really have to foster with the female athletes, where the boys have the creativity but sometimes lack the discipline, is what I've found coaching both, like over. Yeah. It's like it's fun. It's a different puzzle to put together.
It is. Yeah.
If I go back to the first story Deb told, she literally had a group of boys worried about how they looked. So maybe they aren't so, like I wouldn't have never thought that. And then again, I don't know, we're a bunch of hammerheads.
This is a new thing with boys. I had boys for their photo signing, blow drying their hair and flipping it out.
That isn't new.
And then they went and they're like, oh, I got to go practice they went in the mirror to practice their smiles and came back. And I'm like, you can't be serious right now. Like, the girls are easier to take photos.
Deb will remember Miles' seminar having the curly locks. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think that's new. I don't think that's new. Actually, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh man,
I couldn't believe it. I was blown away. I was blown away by it.
Well,
hockey players, it's all about the flow,
catcher,
Chris.
And sometimes we'd go eat after a long tournament, and I had the mark across my
the shale mark.
Didn't care. Yeah. But so it was odd to me that you're finished the tournaments, you're wind blowing, maybe rain, sunburn. You're stopping for a quick bite to eat, and they're in the back of their vehicle, like, grooming themselves. I'm like, well, I never saw this before. On my teams that I played with, that was not an issue. We did not care.
Marshall, Saskatchewan, that team was, right? Right?
That's crazy.
That is crazy. That's a great story. Thanks for coming in, folks. Appreciate it. And Morg said on the phone, he's like, I don't know if I have anything to offer. I laugh at that because every time I sit and listen, I'm like, I'm just picking up little things, We'll keep on this coaching journey. It's been fun, but selfishly having you in here, I'm going to go re-listen and steal some things for the next time U7 or U9 hockey practice comes around, because it's I didn't realize how fortunate I was to have a lady like Deb and others coach us at that age. I don't think I realized it. I just think I assumed you were going to get that everywhere you went. Or, I talk about Merv coaching him and JP Kelly. We had him for a year. And, learned more off Merv in 1 year than I did with certain coaches for 4 years. And you don't realize how rare that is. So to be now on the coaching side of it, it's like, well, I don't want to be the coach. You don't learn anything for 4 years. I really want athletes to succeed. So anything, your minds can help with, I truly appreciate it. I'm sure there's some listeners that are thankful too. So thanks for hopping in tonight.